to be here and share with you, I believe, the first publicly available text-to-speech system for Latin poetry. And pick up the mic. Here we go. Ooh, echoes. Hello, and good morning to you. So the result of all of this sounds like this.
Troiae qui primus amoris Italiam fato profugus lauiniaque venit litora, multille terris iactatus et alto qui superum, saevae memoremium nonis obiram, multa quoque et bello passus, dum condere turbem inferretque Deos latio. Genus unde Latinum Albanique patres ad qualtae Moenia Romae.
That's Virgil, recited in a kind of computery voice. And the way it works is in a few steps. Poetry comes in of some shape. It has a meter to it, and then we decompose it into individual letters. We figure out what the sounds ought to be. We figure out the timing and the pitch, and then it becomes a sound waveform. And there are two ways of doing speech synthesis. You either put someone in a sound booth, or you bring your own pink trombone. And bring your own pink trombone is actually a really effective way of doing it. You've got like a few waves and a few filters, roughly a vowel, some random noise makes a s or a f or a sh sound. It sounds kind of computery. You also need to know where your vowels sit in the mouth, but Macs have done kind of a chiptune retro version of this for like 35 some odd years or so. This is the first Mac introducing itself just after Steve Jobs pulled it out of a bag.
Hello, I'm Macintosh. It sure is great to get out of that bag.
And it roughly resembles pink trombone, but it's kind of with the computing power in 1984. And we've also seen some kind of pop music with exactly that sort of a voice.
Fitter, happier, more productive, comfortable, not drinking too much, regular exercise at the gym, free day.
And I think this was actually the song that inspired me to get interested at it. I think I'd heard it at a K bar like 16 some odd years ago. It was like a new single, and it was.
Push me, and then just touch me, till I can get my satisfaction, 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 satisfaction.
So it's not exactly always used for serious purposes. So that's roughly where the pink trombone speech synthesis is. If you have a lot of voice data, then that can be really intensive as far as compute power goes, but it allows you to capture like people breathing at the start of a sentence. It's not exactly easy to rebuild for like a Latin project, but it sounds very realistic. So this is an AI calling a salon receptionist to book an appointment for a client.
Hi, I'm calling to book a women's haircut for a client. I'm looking for something on May 3rd. Sure, give me 1 second.
That's a computer. So but that's kind of state of the art, commercially available now, but that was not available when I had started this project. So kind of halfway in between there is what's called concatenative synthesis. So you don't kind of know like millions of hours of voice data. You've just got barely enough, and you kind of glue sounds together. You kind of specify which exact sounds you want, the timing and the pitch. You split them down the middle because you don't want kind of the bridges between the sounds to have any gaps. And I think the voice database that powers Poeta Machina is like 10 megabytes or so. So it's fairly compact. It's called Umbrola, and the voice that you heard was an Italian voice. So if you just want to, well, this is not easy to see at all, is it? The upshot is that the input to Umbrola is just a plain text file. You've got the vowels, you've got like the duration of the vowels, and you specify what the pitch is at various intervals. As you can see, we're only specifying it at a few spots, and we interpolate what the pitch ought to be, and it kind of so it kind of interpolates between there, and it works good enough for starters. But I haven't really described what pitch is. And the most fundamental way of thinking about it is the following. Fundamental pitch of your voice gradually falls as your lungs empty of air, and when you take a breath, rises again until it inexorably starts to fall yet again. There are times when that's not true, but focusing on that distracts from the common use case, so you probably shouldn't stress that too much. Prosody, which is kind of that field, as well as microprosody, is an active research field. So you may recall that the Macintosh introduced itself as
Hello, I am Macintosh.
Macintosh, kind of not only the general contour of the sentence, but also like the word itself and variations in that. So even in 1984, it was kind of designed to sound very human. So we haven't actually talked what Latin is. It's a language spoken everywhere from like Scotland, Romania, Kuwait, Morocco, about anywhere from 2,500 years ago to 1,500 years ago, give or take. The poetry that we have roughly dates in the Golden Age from about 2,000 years ago, and there's a specific type of pronunciation, and it's got its own dialect. The formal dialect of poetry is slightly different than what evolved into what has become French, Spanish, Italian, and whatnot. And one fun way that linguists have inferred what the pronunciation should be is that you can see when people spell things in uncommon ways. If you see people spelling that they're there and that they're wrong, then you can infer, oh, it looks like that's pronounced roughly the same. And also we've got some folks kind of making fun of people when they say things wrong. So for instance, in some English dialects, marrying someone, someone's first name of Mary, and someone feeling kind of jolly and merry are all three different vowels. Some people have two, some people have one. And if you think that your way of saying it is correct, and you have the power to write a book that we still have 2,000 years afterwards, then we've got kind of information about about how people pronounce things. And all the poetry we have has different rhythms, and the way that the rhythms are expressed is kind of the length of syllables. And we've got this in English too. We even see in Shakespeare, fair is foul and foul is fair, hover through the fog and filthy air. We've got a specific rhythm of that. When we want to attribute to each syllable an attribute of length, which is called its scansion, we need to generally know what the grammar is. I don't know how familiar you are with Latin APIs. When I did this, the most popular data source was scraping HTML tables from this cool project the Perseus project. And the second most popular data source was a fun do-it-yourself adventure, which I didn't want to do. And it was a bit more complex than that. So what you do is you're like, oh, I've got all of the ways of scanning length, and you pull that from an API, you normalize the spelling. There are some vowels that precede other vowels don't count in the meter. Once you chunk it up into syllables, then you kind of figure out if those scan long or short based on the vowels and the consonants, and you save this intermediate representation because that intermediate representation gives you this, and you've got all the underlines and all that stuff. And you can use punctuation to figure out where someone could plausibly breathe, and then that figures out the pitch and everything. It was a lot of fun to kind of have this as a goal to aim towards. It's been stable-ish as a web API, but I did it before I knew what databases were, so I was like, oh, I'll store API cache results on the file system. So I had a directory with millions of files, 50 bytes long each. Don't do that. And I did this before I had kind of an idea of how I wanted to structure all of this data, because there's a lot of representations of linguistic concepts. There's like consonants and syllables and vowels that precede other vowels before words come. And I was like, I don't know any of that. I'm just going to use it in strings. And I wrote it because I wrote it before like Ruby and Python were a thing. I was like, oh, Perl seems kind of hard to do. I'll do it in the programming language awk. And it's like 300 lines of code, 35% regular expression substitutions. Yikes. So that taught me regular expressions and taught me that's a bad idea for many things. So it's somewhere between a guiding example and a cautionary tale. But poeta.machina.net, it mostly works. Please use it for most of your computery Latin voice needs and tell me what you think. Latin teachers have found it useful, and I had fun making it. And you should teach your computer how to do fun things with voices. Thank you.